So this is a workshop, not a monologue by me. There will be a little bit of me talking, but actually I'm hoping this is a chance for you guys to actually get a chance to talk. There's a lot more of you than I was expecting, so there might be a bit of small groups rather than the whole group sharing everything. But yeah, just to get started, I also figure you've been talked at a lot today, so it's probably a good chance to actually get, some chance to talk. So what I'm doing with this workshop is introducing some ideas from intentional peer support. So those of you who haven't read my abstract, my disciplinary background, I describe it as, is intentional peer support, which is a way of looking at peer support that developed in a particular context and for particular reasons, which I'll get to in a minute. But actually I just wanted to have some time for you guys, maybe just in small groups of like 4 or 5, just introduce yourselves to each other. What's your name, where are you from, what inspires you about peer support, and just something that is interesting about you that is not your job description or your place of employment. Something that's interesting. So we'll do this just for about 5 minutes. So, yeah. All right, folks. Sorry to interrupt some important conversations. I'm not 100% sure how to do this because I've got the microphone and you don't and we're taping, but I think we just kind of go with we're more important than the taping, personally, I think. Yep. So I'm just curious if anyone wants to share, maybe not the whole lot, but maybe just what inspires you about peer support, if anyone wants to share some stuff that came out from their discussions. And just speak loudly. Yeah. Can people hear at the back? Or? So mainly students want to give back to their community?
Yes, so we're on a learning curve at the moment.
On a learning curve, on a steep learning curve. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it has a great power to sort of change workplaces and change the way we do things.
Yeah, peer support has great power to change workplaces and change the way we do things. Yeah, I think sometimes they don't know that though, and they employ us and they, yeah.
Yeah. Similar track, I see peer work as being multi-dimensional, so that there's so many different workplaces that it can integrate into and affect so many different types of people in so many different types of ways.
Do people hear that? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, peer work, it tends to mean less well paid in my experience. Yeah. So how to turn it from a political token, I think is the word you used, into a valued job. Yeah. Did everyone hear that? No, so how to have excellence in this. Is that, yeah. Maybe just one more, yeah.
I'm a student, so I'm not actually in peer support.
Yeah.
But I look at it as the possibility of being able to bring my personal experiences to empathise with someone and maybe give them some possibilities of hope and ways forward and paths to get through.
Yeah. So something about hope, possibilities, empathy, connection. Yeah. My background is I shared a little bit in my keynote. In 2005, I was diagnosed and got into the system and all of that. I was on sickness, and a mentor, someone I put up on a pedestal, Miranda Epstein, I met at a conference, and I went up to her and I went, "Hi, that was really great." After she gave a talk, and at one point she said, like a couple of months later, she said, "Oh, do you want to come to this training?" And I was like, "What is it?" And she says, "Just come." And it was intentional peer support, which is a particular frame. It's not the only one, but it's one that I'm really passionate about. It's grounded in the consumer survivor movement. It has a very strong political history. But it was particularly developed. Sherry Mead is the person who developed it. She also drew on, she's got a social work background, nonviolent communication, a whole bunch of things she's drawn on. But she set up, so she was a social worker first, and then she became unwell, was in the mental health system and had a really, really bad experience. She had her kids taken away. She was given very pessimistic prognosis. And she ended up setting up a peer respite called Stepping Stones, which is one of the first peer respites in the world in 1993. And as a result of her work there, what she noticed is that if peers don't have an alternative framework by which to operate, we can stay peer until we start to be afraid, until things start to get really difficult. And then we tend to revert to particular patterns that we've either seen elsewhere or that are just defaults in our community. So, for example, becoming coercive, becoming really frightened and doing things that are actually coming from a place of our fear rather than a bigger picture of what actually aligns with our values. So she developed a framework that she calls intentional peer support, and it's been developed over, so that was 1993 that she started in that work. And it is taught around the world in a number of different contexts. I personally have a lot of faith that it's a fantastic framework. It is not the only one. There's lots of other ways of doing peer support. But I offer this in the sense of, I think we need to be able to articulate what it is that we're actually doing and why, so that we're not just kind of helpers who jump in and help. And that's the principle that I'm going to have us have a bit of a closer look at today. So I'm guessing, has anyone here done intentional peer support training or kind of come across it or, yay, yay. So you'll be kind of, I'm not quite sure what your role will be here, but maybe, offering a more, I don't know, taking it to another level or something, I'm not quite sure. But these are the three, so the three ones at the top are three principles which are structured as ways of conceptualising what it is that peer workers actually can do with each other. So moving away from a helping relationship to one where we're learning together. Moving away from a focus on the individual to a focus on the relationship, and from fear to hope, and hope was brought out. These are all, things that we could go into a lot of detail with. I'm just going to look at the first one because I think it's a really interesting idea about how do peers work with each other so that we're not helping each other to do what I did, which I think sometimes we can be set up to do that. And then there's 4 tasks, so connection, worldview, mutuality, moving towards. There's a lot of stuff on the internet about this, but I just wanted to sort of spend some time on this first principle, so about moving away from this idea of that we're supposed to be helpful, that help is the whole point. So this is a workshop, not a lecture. So this is an activity. So was there ever a time when you felt like most of your relationships were either based on getting or giving support, sorry. How did you begin to think about your relationships, and how did you think about yourself? So was there ever a time when you were stuck in either one of those? Or you might say that you've moved between them, but yeah, just have a think about that. And then again, we'll be in groups. You might want to mix it up and be with different people or stick with the same people. We'll do this for about, I reckon, 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah? All right, folks. Sorry to cut off. Good discussion again. I know, I need a little bell. At least I've got a microphone. Ding, 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 ding. And I think the group at the back was just getting into it too. Yes. My apologies. I'm just wondering again if some people would like to share what came out of that for them. Any thoughts that feel shareable? And again, I'll try and translate if it's a bit quiet. Yeah.
There's a risk in your identity gets constructed around being a giver or that kind of stuff.
Did people hear that at the back? No, so your identity gets constructed around being a giver or a getter, I think is the word. Yeah. What else? Yeah.
I just think that because you're in that position where you sort of get to the point where you do try and get that balance back. So if you're always giving, you get to the point where you start doing something like something to give back to me. And then on the other side, you're always getting, and then start
Do I need to repeat that?
And ultimately, I understand, I think that deep down into our life as a person.
And yet the reason why this question is posed is that so often in the mental health system, this is how we get constructed, that we're supposed to be either a helper or a helpee. That's kind of, you know, a big part of how systems get set up. Yeah. You have the capacity to grow from that, absolutely. And I'm also going to say there are times when actually you just need help. So if you're crossing the road and you have really heavy bags and somebody can, you know, help you with that, you know, there are times, but it's when you get stuck in either of these roles. And I think I could hear some of you talk about the resentment that can build up if you're kind of the one who's always giving. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
Just thought you can be a getter from one system, like the mental health system, but you can be a giver in another system, like your church.
Yeah.
You could be a great giver in that church, but be a getter in the other system. So
Absolutely.
It flows.
And I think a lot of people said that you're a giver in one system and a getter in another. Yeah.
Adding to that, it is quite cultural, that I know just growing up in my family, we don't have a caravan house. So we were always leading by example and always doing things a certain way and directing that a certain way. Beyond that, we're not. So you end up, I suppose, once you've done that kind of overarching looking out for everybody, you tend to be more in one control than the other.
Yeah. Just moving on to another set of questions which are very, very similar. What does it feel like to be the helper, the helpee? And then we've got a third position up here, a learner, like someone who's just learning together, like we're all here together learning, I'm hoping. Anyone got any thoughts about any of these questions?
I'm just hearing you sort of say helping and learner. I'm having a click and recognising what you're talking about in the first slide. That the learner, if we view ourselves as learners or helping is we become equalised. We equalise the power.
And those of you who you might notice some overlaps with open dialogue, I do certainly see that there's a lot of like everyone's in the room together, learning together, rather than kind of, I am here to help you. Yeah. Yeah.
I see the word helper and for a few times now. There was a book in my early years of study that was called When Helping You is Better Than Me.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really powerful, it was the title, it was also the video. And I think that's a really powerful summary of what actually happens in life. Because it's not journeying together. It's one person in a position of power and unequal power for another person. And it's the same for helping, where when we're alone, we're learning and journeying together.
Do I need, just please do let me know if I need to repeat. Yeah. Anything else come up for people?
I thought when you're in a relationship that as a helper and like any personal relationship in that role starts to become onerous and it takes it becomes the dominant aspect of that relationship, so the relationship stops being pleasurable or nourishing both of you and it becomes a burden. So
Can I just try and repeat what you've said so far? So when you get stuck in the helper relationship, it can become like a burden and it's not actually working for either of you, or it's...
Yeah, it loses any kind of sense of a two-way relationship.
It loses that sense of a two-way relationship. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the learning together brings around, as somebody who's been in both positions, working as a support worker as well as having together to learn, it brings in a sense of that mutuality. And it does break those power imbalances down. So as someone who could be to human or whatever, it gives you a chance to really bring some authenticity into your work, because I find that there's that understanding that it's okay to make mistakes, and that just because you're in a support role, if you're learning and working together, it's okay to say, well, actually, I don't know the answer to that, and so it takes some of the pressure off. So therefore, being more open and listening.
Do people hear that? No. So if you're able to, you can be more mutual, and it takes a lot of the pressure off from the person who's the helper to have to know everything, and they can make mistakes. Is there anything else I missed? Lots, but I'm trying to... Great. Yeah. Yeah. It can sometimes be difficult for them to move into a Helpee role, yeah, which is evidenced by how difficult it is for people who work in the mental health system to actually experience mental health challenges and to acknowledge them, and for that to be okay, which is not exactly the point you're making, but yeah, it can be really difficult to transition. I would also say it's very difficult for people who are set up as a helper to actually be a learner, to not have the answers and to say, I'm not sure, let's figure this out together. Yeah.
I think that comes to that word success as well, because whether the success has to be failure, or when you're in the Helpee or the Helpee stage, you do sort of, if you don't get where you need to, you don't get where you need to get to, you might fail as a helper, and you fail as a Helpee, there's that little sense of, you me. That's my fault, and get you there, it's your fault, so you get in yourself, so that's really hard. Why they're not working together, they're just learning. It's not so much a success or failure, it's just we're not the same fault we is.
Why do you think I'm asking these questions in the context of peer support? Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
Could be an approach to peer support. Going on what you were talking about this morning, the approach of the person in a group, if you're facilitating, I suppose, in a sense. I've got all the language but the group discussion with all the people involved in real life and living with the person's mental illness. If you approach it from a learner position, where you're on an equal basis, it opens it up surely for everyone to express themselves, and probably opens up a lot of understanding and consideration of different ideas.
Yeah.
I think it's important to start a relationship. It's important to discuss how the relationship will evolve rather than once the relationship is established and there is a help and a Helpee, it's hard to break that. And if you do try to break it, it can cause a bit of chaos.
But you're my helper. You can't leave me.
It's important to discuss the relationship before it does get established.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting because I was just thinking about the relationship I had with my 16-year-old son who's autistic, and there was a time obviously when I wasn't self-aware because he was too young to help himself. And as I got older and needed to start taking more responsibility, tried to move more into this sort of mutual learner role. But there was a lot of resistance to that because one, I'm mum, so I had to do everything for him. And two, he was a bit slower to develop. So, this concept of doing things himself came a lot later in his life. So we have a lot of resistance there, but it's starting to work. It's good because I learned as much from him as he learns from me.
And there can be this resistance on both sides. it can feel really good to be in one role or the other. You know, there are benefits to both of them. You know, having things done for you all the time there can be a pleasure in that, or being, here comes mum, you know.
Yeah. Your purpose is to help. Like you're always helping, continuously getting nothing back. Then you're not really teaching that person to help themselves in any way, so they become dependent on you for their whole life, you know, I'm trying to say. So.
Do people at the back hear that? No, so if you're always the helper, then you're teaching the people you work with that they'll always be dependent on you.
They won't take that onus on themselves to help themselves anymore. They'll just rather, you know, go to you because you're doing it all the time. So like, yeah, cool, you can do it.
Which I have to say, sometimes I do that with IT people. I have no desire to learn some things. I'm like, please, can you fix this? You know, there are times. But, you know, if you're always stuck in that role, it can really give you a sense of that you can't do anything and that you are, you know. So part of why I talk about this with peer support is that I think peer support workers, like some of the things we said earlier about how peer support can change the culture, in some ways peer support workers can create this mutuality much more, like we have less to lose in some ways than, for example, psychiatrists who are culturally designated to be the one who knows, you know, they often have the coroner, you know, that in their head, you know, that they have to manage things, they have to be in charge, they have to do these things. Whereas I think peer support workers, and I think lots of other workers too, can take this stance. You know, people who are positioned in a way that they don't have as much to lose in terms of, you know, their power position. Yeah, I think there was a hand here.
I was studying some peer support and mental health, and we're, as we go in as peer support workers to our clients or consumers, we're there to enable and empower them not to help, you know, just to go alongside them and have you thought about this, would you like to try that? Not say, you need to do this, and this.
And so, did people hear that? So this woman's training as a peer support worker and is saying that she's trained to go in and empower people and work alongside them rather than help them. Is that fair? And I'm going to push that in the sense of, I think a lot of us say that's what we're doing, that we're walking alongside people, but I think that can still have a helping undertone, that I'm helping them become more empowered. And I think that the real challenge is to genuinely be doing that, to actually be supporting someone, but actually intentional peer support argues that the way to do that is actually to be on a learning journey together so that people can, so that you're not helping them to get more power, because actually that still has this sense of that you can dispense that somehow, that you have something to give them. Yeah.
Helping them, well, giving them the options.
Yeah.
And letting them know what's out there to access services so they can access the community and become whatever they want to be. So they can access a career or education, or if they want to do dog grooming or join a walking group, or just opening up the door, sort of looking in this door. Would you like to do that? Would you like to do this? It's difficult to explain.
No, I think I'm hearing. Did people hear that? I can't tell. Yes, there was nods. Yeah. Yeah.
I think also in terms of, which was touched on earlier, a few things in terms of language. If you're using the word helper or, you know, helped or victim or, you know, sick person, by replacing that with learning, you're taking, just by the different word, different connotations, so you take away the stigmatisation that's already inherent in the word helper or helped. Which in a sense gives you an opportunity to create a whole new relationship based on different and negotiable boundaries that aren't already prescribed. So that's stigmatising. Yeah.
Do I need to repeat that? Oh goodness, I'm going to struggle with that. So if you change the language away from a helpee, helper towards learner, it means that you...
Taking that
Taking away the stigma. Yeah. And I think also you were talking about you can have different boundaries and negotiate different boundaries because you're not stuck in this kind of...
Because it's created a whole new space.
Yeah, it creates a whole new space. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wondered, what you thought of being a helper, unintentional peer worker, and in my private life I have help friends out. So where's the sort of, and might be a term, but so as a helper you support using the experience alongside them, they're mental and vulnerable. So I just wondered, why is the term helper not politically correct or something?
I think that's the danger with this, is that's the take-home message, is just don't be a helper, or don't think that being a helper is bad. It's not that being a helper is bad. In fact, I love people who help me with IT. I love people who help me, you know, if there's certain things that you need help with. But the question is, have you become stuck in a certain role so that you are always the person who is helped? And the idea behind this sort of exercise is that some people get stuck in a being helped role, and peer support workers can come in and do the exact same, I'll help you. And it's not to say that it's never okay to be in these helpee roles. Absolutely, you know, can you help me figure out how to do this paperwork, or can you help me, you know, those kinds of things.
As a helper,
Yeah.
not say that I don't have to do it for people, but you're helping them see hope right at the end of the time. So to me, I think being a helper is a good thing and be support, but without being dependency as well. So it's a fine line.
Just makes me think that lawyers can know that out by saying, I can't give you legal advice. But a question, sorry, I can't give you legal advice, but you know, that they're our advocates. So they get to see the helper, and there's no problem with being a helper unless you're a client, you can't see another way to. So you get to see the helper.
Yeah, let's hope that peer support workers don't become like lawyers. I don't know, maybe we'll earn more money. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this idea of helper and learner? I don't know if it's sitting with anyone, or if it's kind of like, no, I don't understand any of it.
Can I just mention something? I think there's a bit of a susceptibility to fall into the trap of blurred boundaries. Sometimes you can become too much of a learner, or you know, it's just really easy to blur the relationship between. I mean, you don't need a helper and person. But I know what the limitations are. And I think the more that you move towards the learner role and learning together, that it becomes tricky in terms of personal boundaries.
What's the fear in that?
Well, I guess around safety and whether or not that person takes it to the level or assumes that you take it to the next level, i.e. friendship, or whether or not that's a discussion that's had or continually had. Or, there's a lot of different things that you need to be really careful with each one.
And peer work is really interesting, like what's the difference between a peer worker and a friend? And in fact, this stuff around boundaries, I often describe myself as a professional oversharer. Actually, the stuff that I share about suicide, self-harm, really stuff that is kind of not really what most people share about, but that is kind of what I'm in some ways paid to do. That is part of my... So yeah, the boundaries around peer work are really, really interesting. What is the difference between a peer worker and a clinical worker? Are there differences, and does it matter? And in some ways, a lot of what is good peer work practice is just good practice. But if there are differences, some of us are employed because of our lived experience. What is that difference? How does that impact on our work, and how are we different from friends? Because often people will interpret the relationship as if it's a friendship, and if it's set up as a peer support relationship, maybe it's different. In lots of peer support environments, actually, there is no distinction. Like I think about 12-step, for example, it doesn't have this boundaried kind of, now I am your this, and now I'm, that kind of... So, there's a lot of complexities around this. And part of what I'm trying to get at with this talk is that this stuff's actually really meaty and complex. And if we just pretend that peer work is, you've got a lived experience, come on board, that's, I think, quite dangerous. There's a hand at the back there. Yeah.
position of a peer worker, you need to reflect and wonder what part of your ego and what part of you, as you say, what your output, whose needs are you meeting? You're meeting your own needs to be a helper, even in an unaware state, that you're not aware that you're meeting your own needs. So I think reflection is very important to keep that balance between the worker and helper well-being.
Absolutely. I'm shocked. I think psychiatry is the only discipline that doesn't actually have supervision as a sort of normal, maybe there are other disciplines too, but psychiatry doesn't have that sort of supervision, reflexive, which I just think is shocking. I think all of us need to have those kinds of mechanisms where we self-reflect around whose needs are being met, what is actually driving this practice. I'm also going to flag, we're coming to the end of the time, we have to end at 4, but there are a couple of hands, I'm not meaning to cut you off, just flagging that. Yeah. It's not quite correct. Sure.
Supervision, it's just going in a different way.
Sure. I've heard a lot of people that I work with who are psychiatrists say that, and so obviously there are different perspectives around, yeah, and maybe it's called different things and functions in different ways, yeah. There was another hand here, I think. You're going to go, Yes.
Thought it's an interesting kind of tension too, because at the same time as wanting to, it makes so much sense to feel that it's not the power imbalance in a relationship. Obviously, it's also about the ability to professionalise that workforce, to make it a sustainable workforce, to pay properly, and to allow that professional level of respect, and also for those individuals to not be 24/7 in personal giving mode, so that they can have that distance from a professional job like everybody else needs. So, that ability to recognise yourself as a professional peer worker, distinct from being a consumer or anything else you are outside of that, whilst also having that non-ego, or if you like, power play kind of relationship with the client.
Should I repeat that for people at the back? Yeah. So this lady was talking about that peer work is also professionalising, and there is a sort of it's a profession and also that you might not want to be 24/7 available to people. So actually, without this sort of power over, how do you negotiate?
Yeah, whilst wanting to be on a very perhaps with the individual that you are a peer supporter to, you also want to be able to be professionally understood and respected by your clinical counterparts, and be able to put your professional hat on so that you can take it off and get a break from it like everybody else.
So needing to be able to put your professional hat on and off. And I'm just going to finish with this around the power. This question of who is your peer, if one of you is paid and one of you is unpaid, actually there's a power differential. If one of you has keys to the staff room, if one of you, and so one of my colleagues, Ray Waddingham, who's a hearing voice, she's big in the hearing voices movement. I think she's just been elected chair of Intervoice. I don't know, she's a very, very impressive woman. She does a lot of work around hearing voices in prison. And she says, and also she does a lot of work with children, and she says, what does peer mean when she's able to go home at the end of the day and other people are locked up? It doesn't mean that you can't aspire to be as peer as possible, but if you pretend that you're peer when actually one of you's paid or one of you, has this professional career and the other one is, in a different place in life, how do you navigate the peer part of this? So yeah, I guess the take home is lots of complexity, lots of different views, and thank you. Yeah. That's it, we're done, folks. I've got a taxi to catch. And some sleep. Yeah. Oh, imagine that.